Hey guys, how's it going today? Today I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind for a while, and I wanted to share it all with you guys and get your thoughts and opinions. So, the topic of today is appreciating the little things. Now, what I mean by that is we don't always appreciate the things we used to have or we have currently. That could be, we have a roof over our head, a decent running car, clean running water, or a food stocked pantry. And the thing is, what I, was thinking about was we don't always appreciate those things, that we always think about. And, we always think about chasing the next best thing or trying to be the next best thing or whatever. And, it's the little things that we have, we just don't always look at it that way. And, an example I can give is like, maybe let's say you have a wardrobe of clothes and you have a lot of clothes in there. And I have a lot of clothes as well. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I have, a good amount of shirts, shorts, pants, etc. But the one thing is, what I, want to say about appreciating the little things is that, we don't always need to have the fanciest stuff. And I'm one of those people that's a simple guy. I don't buy the most expensive clothes on the market. I don't go to all these fancy stores and buy fancy clothes. I go to the department retail store in my town and I just buy what I like and what fits my, my image. And, everybody's different. Everybody has different colors, different styles, different tastes, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's appreciating those things that you have. Like, you're able to wake up, put on a fresh pair of clothes, and, go out either whether it be to work or with friends or, family, anything like that. But it's always appreciating those things that we have currently, because at any time, something like that could disappear. We could get rid of it. It could get damaged. We don't know. Everything's an unknown sometimes. And it's just like, having a roof over our head. A lot of people don't, they take it for granted. We take it for granted. A lot of us do. Every one of us probably takes that for granted. We have a roof over our head that protects us from the heat, from the rain, from the cold. We have a car that runs, just little things like that. A car is very important. Everybody relies on a car nowadays. This isn't like 100 years ago when public transit, riding a horse, getting around was a lot different. Nowadays we can just hop in the car, drive, 5-10 minutes to the nearest, burger place, get a burger, and then drive back home. And, you're able to go there and back without any problems. You don't get in any car accidents. You don't have any problems with your engine. You have, good running tires. It's those little things that, matter. And it's like when you come home, you're able to come home, the air conditioning's on, the heater might be on, depending on the time of year, you're able to go to your room or your den or whatever you have in your house. And, you can go in there and relax and chill, put on YouTube, watch videos, watch streaming services, whatever it may be, work on a hobby. It's those little things that we take for granted. I mean, even a hobby we take for granted because, that might be the one thing that, it just has your focus every day. And, and what it took you to get to that point to, get involved in a hobby. Like maybe you're a modeler. You like modeling, airplanes or tanks or whatever. And it's those little things, we don't appreciate it because we think, I just need to get this done as fast as humanly possible, or I need to do this or that. And it doesn't always have to be that way. When you work on a project, it shouldn't be trying to rush it as fast as you can. It should be, okay, what steps do I have to take to make it in the way I want to make it look? And an example of that is like having a Lego set. You go and buy a Lego set, it has, 2,000 pieces, and it's going to take you, who knows how many days or how many hours to build. And it's a step-by-step process. And, you have to get all the parts out of the bags. You got to open the bags up. You got to get out the parts, sort the parts, follow step-by-step instructions. And it's those little things that, we take for granted because, we're just in such a rush to put it together, but we're not taking the time to appreciate the fact that we were able to go out and buy that Lego set. We were able to put it together and show it all to those who, may see it, whether it be a family member, a friend visiting, who knows. But it's those little things that we don't always appreciate in that time, whenever it was done or whenever we had it. Let's say you had an old gaming system that you lost a long time ago or you sold off or whatever, and you really missed that item. Well, it's one of those things that, if you're able to reconvene at a later time and get said item and, relive those memories, that's great, but it's appreciating what you had then and even now like, leading on to an example of that, I used to have a GameCube, and years ago I got rid of it because I wanted an Xbox. Well, years later, I wanted to buy another GameCube, and I was lucky enough to be able to get another one for a good price and was able to relive my childhood. But it's appreciating those little things that we have. Like I said going earlier, with clothes. Like, I don't buy the fanciest clothes. I just go to the local retail store, buy what I like, what fits my style, like I said before. And just, those little things, it's those little things that matter to us. We just take it for granted. And it's just like the car you probably have, whether it's not the nicest car or the greatest car, but it runs. The engine runs, you do the oil, you make sure you have good tires on it, you get the basic maintenance done. And that car is able to get you from point A to point B and wherever else you may need to go, whether it be at work, whether it be meeting up with friends, going to that amusement park in your town, who knows what it is. But those little things we don't always appreciate in that moment. Like I before I got a newer car, I had an older car that I bought from a family member, and it ran and I drove it around and did things. But once it started having problems, I started to look for another car because I didn't want to deal with the headache of having to put more money into it, and that's okay, But it did its job. What it was supposed to do was to get me by until I could get the next best thing, and I appreciated what the car did, and I still have it to this day. I just don't use it as much because my newer car has, modern features. It has better air conditioning and other things that I just appreciate more than my older car. Now, my older car, I do appreciate that it ran and it didn't have any major problems. But the problem was that, the upkeep on it was costing me a lot of money. I had to get a lot of parts replaced on it, and that was costing more than the car was worth. But I appreciated that it got me from point A to point B when I needed to get somewhere. Now, in the summertime, it was not fun because I had no AC, and that was not fun. So luckily, when I got my newer car, it helped. But it's appreciating those things that, get you through the day or get you through that time period that, always matters. It's just like, when you're probably going to school, anybody that's probably going to school, you just want to get through it as fast as possible. But you don't take the time to look back on it and say, oh, all those memories of talking with classmates, talking to the professor, doing those group projects, all those little things. And it doesn't mean it has to be a big deal. It's just we don't appreciate that time when we had it. When I went to college, I met a lot of people, and then of course COVID hit, and I didn't think about it at the time. But once COVID hit, you didn't really think about going back to school. And appreciating the time that you had being around all these other people of, different backgrounds, different, age differences. A lot of people in my class were either younger or older than me. It didn't matter. It wasn't like high school where everybody's kind of around the same age. But, it's those little things that we don't always appreciate. One day it can be there and the next day it can be gone. And I just, wanted to share what I thought about appreciating the little things. And there's a lot of other things I could talk about, but I don't want to drag it on too long. I just wanted to get, just something out there that I've been thinking about that we need to always think about. Like, it's the little things that matter. It's not always the newest or the best things that matter. And like I said before, it's, coming home to having a roof over your head, having, running water for a shower, a running car that we, can get us everywhere we need to go. And, and the clothes on our backs, that we can wake up and, put on a new pair of shoes and socks and shorts and shirts and whatever else you may think of. And, be able to say, yeah, I have that. I'm able to go out today wearing another outfit. And it's just, appreciating those things. We don't always appreciate them when we have them. But anyway, I just wanted to leave that as a note. You guys can, leave any suggestions or comments down below. And, I hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.